This is the London-based photographer Ivan Weiss, and you're listening to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast with Sharky James. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Fujifilm, Tenba, Nanlite, and Kupo. Further details and discount codes later in the show. Welcome to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast, episode 371, Nikon's List of the Dead. In this episode, Nikon's graveyard grows, Tamron's new 50-400 ultra telephoto, Sony's firmware flop, a Yongnuo lens surprisingly wows, Myops takes it further, Peter's new tool, Sigma's 2 new wides, ProGrade Digital's new mobile reader, these Lexars are fast, and the Z7 gets the axe. All that and more in episode 371 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Thank you so much, Ivan, for opening the show. I greatly appreciate it, brother. Spend even a few moments over on the Instagram account of London-based photographer Ivan Weiss, and you'll see that he's a master of the portrait and headshot as well. So it is no wonder that he's a mentor in Peter Hurley's headshot crew. He's a true master of his craft and an inspiration as well. If you enjoy great photography, and especially if you want to see how it's done and learn from one of the best out there today, head on over to ivanweiss.london on Instagram or his website at ivanweiss.london, and you'll be happy that you did. Weiss is spelled W-E-I-S-S, by the way. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us here in episode 371 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. We appreciate you all so much, and thank you all for subscribing, rating, and reviewing us in iTunes or wherever else you listen to us. And as always, we appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Do it now, please, so you don't miss a single episode, as well as telling all your friends on social media and elsewhere, and helping to get the word out about this show. If you each told just one person about this show, we would literally double the audience, and that would be awesome. Okay, with that, I'm your host, Sharky James. Let's hit it. One of the reasons many of you have told me that you listen to this show for so many years now, and my motivation for creating this show in the first place a little over 8 years ago, is to help keep the photography community informed. From the early days, a recurring theme of the show was how Nikon and Canon were completely clueless when it came to mirrorless. And as we know, they finally realized that, and they've leaned way in on the mirrorless arena because that's where everyone has gone. All while largely pretending that their DSLR systems were still a thing when they clearly are not. I recently told you how many years it's been since those companies released a DSLR, and now a new report provides possible evidence that the DSLR is dead to Nikon, as it claims the company has discontinued producing a full 35 of its f-mount lenses over the last 3 years. Amateur Photographer magazine in the UK has been keeping track of the availability of Nikon's DSLR lenses, and while the PetaPixel mothership has been unable to receive a statement from Nikon confirming this, a quick check of Nikon Japan's official list of old product, as they call it, and the list of discontinued items is staggeringly long. And while they're not the company's most impressive lenses, it's a list of lenses you just wouldn't get rid of if you were serious about providing your customers with options, especially affordable options. We already know that Nikon has stated that their goal is to move toward higher-end, pricier cameras and lenses so they can make more money, and that leaves the beginner end of the market just out in the cold. If you're getting into Nikon mirrorless, you're going to have to pay a premium. If you're getting into one of Nikon's DSLRs, well, you're probably buying into a system that's pretty darn close to end of life. Knowing that is important, I think. Just as it's important to know that 35 of the more affordable lenses are no longer being made. So if you're looking to grow with a system in the hopes that new bodies will be released and lenses will be refreshed along the way, Nikon's DSLR system doesn't look to be what you want. And heck, if it's video that you're looking to shoot, good luck getting stepping motor versions of Nikon f-mount glass, because that doesn't appear to be a possibility. If you're okay with that and you'd like to snap up lenses on the used market and make that work for you, you could certainly do so and save some money along the way and be set. And the deals are just going to get better as people unload their legacy DSLR systems. That's right, I said it, legacy. Well, it is. Now, on the Canon side of things, let's not forget that we learned earlier this year that the company had discontinued all but 9 of its EF mount prime lenses. Let that sink in right there. All but 9. They called it a system optimization. That's their words. And yes, I'm doing air quotes here, but that's code for you're never going to see those lenses produced again, let alone updated. The demand is simply not there. That's why they're on the list after all. Some of those lenses have been replaced with a variant, but with so many people buying mirrorless bodies and lenses and DSLRs and their lenses being on the decline, as evidenced by sales data and what the companies have actually said themselves, you got to figure that these lists of old product and or discontinued lenses will continue to grow. And like Sony with its A-mount system, we're not likely to ever see an announcement from Canon and Nikon that they've given up on the DSLR. That's just not going to be a thing. In a couple of years from now, when it's been a good half a decade since you've seen a brand new Canon or Nikon DSLR, I think it's going to be kind of obvious what's going on there. Even the most skeptical will have to admit finally that these companies are letting these systems fade away. They are all about mirrorless right now. That is where the money is at. The DSLR is never going to make a resurgence. That is not happening. Next. Third-party lens maker Sigma has announced 2 new wide primes for Sony E and Leica L. Their 24mm f1.4 DG DN Art and the 20mm f1.4 DG DN Art. The latter being the world's first 20mm f1.4 lens for mirrorless. That 20 is constructed of 17 elements in 15 groups, 2 of which are SLD elements and 3 spherical elements, and it has an aperture range of f1.4 through f16 with an 11-bladed aperture diaphragm for a rounder bokeh. This lens comes in at 635 grams, that's 1.4 pounds, has a minimum focusing distance of 9.1 inches, that's 23.11 centimeters. It's dust and splash resistant, and it's compatible with Sigma's USB dock. This new lens is also compatible with Sony's AF assist function on E-mount bodies, as well as the lens aberration correction feature on select bodies. There's also a configurable AFL switch, an aperture ring lock switch, and the aperture ring can be declicked, which is something that's going to be especially useful when you're shooting video. It's a lot smoother, needless to say. Now, Sigma says that this lens offers superb optical clarity from corner to corner, great build quality, has a dust and splash resistant build, and is particularly well suited for astrophotography. And to that end, Sigma says that this lens rigorously, their words, suppresses optical aberrations such as sagittal coma flare and image distortion, yielding highly detailed images with sharpness from the center on out to the corners. If you've listened to my advice all these years and got yourself threaded filters in 82 millimeters, no step-up rings needed with this lens because it takes 82s. And Nikon's done something really cool because this lens, in addition to that, also has a rear filter holder. That way you can mix and match and you've got more options. And of course, options are good. Now, finding filters for the back of a lens, well, that's not quite as easy as finding ones of the threaded variety. There's still options out there. I think Haida, H-A-I-D-A, makes some and a few others, but you've got limited options. The other option you have all day, every day, of course, is getting a 100 or 150 millimeter filter box and using square filters. So there's that as well. Additionally, there's a new manual focus lock MFL switch, which, when activated, disables the focus ring, so you don't have to worry about accidentally jostling that and throwing off your focus, which happens. Don't ask me how. Cough, cough. And because they're Sigma, there's also a lens heater retainer on this lens. So if you're doing astrophotography or just shooting at night in colder temperatures, which are coming up here in the northern hemisphere, you can use a lens heater to help prevent internal condensation. If all that sounds great to you, the new Sigma 20mm f1.4 DG DN Art is available for pre-order right now in both Sony E and Leica mounts for $899 US. Now, as for Sigma's new 24mm f1.4 DG DN Art series lens, this is basically an existing lens which has been retooled for mirrorless and generally updated overall. The company says this lens features edge-to-edge sharpness, is more portable, and like that new 20, has a manual aperture ring, which can be declicked for those that are shooting video. This lens has 17 elements and 14 groups, including 2 FLD, 1 SLD, and 4 spherical elements, an aperture range of f1.4 through f16 with an 11-bladed aperture diaphragm. It weighs in at 520 grams, also known as 1.15 pounds, has a minimum focusing distance of 9.9 inches, that's 25.15 centimeters, is dust and splash resistant, and is also compatible with the company's USB dock. And like that 20, it's compatible with Sony's AF assist function on E-mount bodies, as well as lens aberration correction in camera. This new 24 suppresses aberrations like sagittal coma flare, ghosting, and flares, and through the use of the company's super multi-coating and nanoporous coating, this lens delivers what Sigma refers to as visual punch. That's their words, even in backlit conditions near its maximum aperture. Sigma is promoting the small size of this lens as one of the main reasons to consider it, as it comes in at just 3 by 2.8 inches, that's 7.62 by 9.61 centimeters. Like that new 20-1.4, this new 24-1.4 has a rear filter holder, which I think all lenses should have, why not? But the front of this lens is threaded for 72mm filters, unlike the 82 from that 20. So you're going to want to get yourself a quality set of step-up rings to use this lens. With your 82s, they're about 20 to 30 bucks or so. Not a big deal. This lens, in addition to the MFL switch, has the same lens heater retainers on the 20. And if all this sounds great to you, the new Sigma 24mm f1.4 DG DN Art series lens is available for pre-order right now in both Sony E and Leica L mounts for $799 US. Next. If you're creating content on the go and you don't have a built-in SD card slot, such as the one that's back in MacBook Pros, you might want to have a look at the new and tiny card reader from ProGrade Digital. The new PGM 0.5 mobile card reader features a full-size SD card slot, as well as one of those of the micro SD variety on one end, and on the other end is a USB 3.2 Type-C connector. You know, the newer oval variety, not the old school, slower, rectangular ones which you can plug in the wrong way, and usually do pretty much 90% of the time. This tiny card reader, which is not much larger than a full-size SD card, is meant for use with laptops, tablets, and other mobile devices, and boasts 625 megabytes per second transfer speeds, which is pretty darn quick. And of this, ProGrade Digital CEO and founder Wes Brewer says, quote, "A new wave of content creators has emerged over the last couple of years, driven strongly by sharing platforms such as YouTube and TikTok. A large portion of these creators are operating in a highly mobile environment, utilizing a variety of devices such as smartphones, tablets, and lightweight laptops for video editing, along with powerful new editing software applications. Content capture devices utilized by these creators include high-resolution action cameras, drones, and mirrorless cameras. The majority of the content captured on these devices is stored on SD and micro SD memory cards. To better support these users, we have developed our new dual-slot SD/micro SD card reader, PGM 0.5, that can provide a highly portable, high-speed way to import all this content directly into mobile editing platforms at a very affordable new price point. End quote. Now, since it's a USB Type-C connector, there's no wrong way to plug it in, as I said, and while only one slot at a time works when plugged into a tablet or smartphone, both slots can be used simultaneously when plugged into a laptop. So you might have stuff from your drone on a micro SD card and stuff from your mirrorless body, and you can offload both of those at the same time. Now, if this sounds like something that you need in your life, you can get one right now on ProGrade Digital's website, as well as those of online retailers for $35 US. Next. My memory is horrible, so I can't remember if I told you about how I recently received 2 of the 4-foot versions of Nanlite's sweet PavoTube 2Xs. I absolutely love them, just like everyone does. Not only can you dial in any color you need, there's a bunch of pixel-based special effects, and of course, the one that everyone leaves it on and demonstrates because it's really cool looking, the rainbow. If you hurry, you can get the very kit that I've got for 20% off. No code needed. Just head on over to nanliteus.com. That's NANLITEUS.com. That kit comes with a 4-foot PavoTube 2 30X RGB WW with internal battery, a power cable should you choose to use it plugged in, a really nice padded case, 2 T12 clips with quarter-20 receivers, 2 quarter-20 eye bolts for further mounting options, and that sweet warranty of theirs. These units have a color temperature range of 2700 to 12,000 degrees Kelvin with green to magenta adjustment, an average CRI of 95, a TLCI of 98, full spectrum RGB hue and saturation control, and so much more. And if you'd rather have the 2-foot or 8-foot versions, they're also 20% off for a limited time. And then there's the older but still awesome PavoTube 30C units, which are also 20% off and considerably cheaper. Then there's their company's MixPad 2s, some Forza units, and a bunch of other goodies while supplies last. So if you've been thinking about picking up some industry-leading LED gear, now's the time, and nanliteus.com is the place. Next. Don't forget that coming up next month, also known as September 2022, are 2 awesome events from Fujifilm. The Streaming X Summit NYC 2022 starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the 8th, and the in-person event called Fujikina 2022 on the 10th at the Glass House in New York City, where you can be awash in everything Fuji. Registration is free, so head on over to Fujifilm-X.com for details, and it's going to be sweet. Now, last time around, I told you about Fujifilm's Create With Me monthly photo competition where you can win some sweet Fuji gear. Round 4 was nature, and there's still time left in August of 2022 to enter the self-portraits competition. Select Fujifilm creators are sharing their insight and secrets, so maybe you can pick up that missing piece to win this round. Or show them that you've already got the right stuff and take that prize. To check out the details, hit the link in the show notes or just head on over to bit.ly.com/createwithmenow. It's hard to believe, but this year marks 10 years of Fujifilm's X-mount. I've been a Fuji shooter for years now, leaving the heavier stuff in the dust. I'm having more fun shooting with this system as well. Fujifilm heard about my switch a number of years ago, and it's been 3 years now that they've been sponsoring this show. And we thank them for that. They rock. Also, don't forget their 52 weeks of free education over at bit.ly.com/52learn. Next. When I say the name Yongnuo, what word comes to mind? Cheap. I hear cheap. Okay, being generous, let's go with inexpensive, because cheap has a different connotation, I guess, depending on who you ask. I use them interchangeably, but that's just me. I'm a sample size of 1, especially since I've lost a bit of weight. I might have been a sample size of 1.5 or 2 there for a while. COVID times, what can I say? Anyhow, I believe the only Yongnuo products I've ever owned is one of their flashes and a set of triggers that I bought on Amazon like 6 years ago now. I paid about $100 for the flash and about $78 or so for the triggers, which wasn't too bad at all. They're mostly plastic, as you might imagine, but they're fairly well made, I thought. And they were a fraction of the price of what Canon and Nikon were selling. I needed an extra cheap flash to be used in slave mode for the most part back then, and it did its job pretty darn well. Now, would I buy a Yongnuo lens? Probably not. It's just not a brand that makes the short list when you're thinking about third-party lenses. You're thinking Tamron and Sigma and maybe Tokina. I don't know. I haven't used a Tokina in forever. Maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll try Tokina again and maybe Yongnuo. Stranger things have happened. Anyhow, against all odds, the company's 85mm f1.8 has somehow made the list of the top 3 lenses ever over on DxOMark's website. Not the top 3 85s ever, the top 3 lenses ever. I know, I had to double check that myself just to be sure. Number 1, by the way, is Sigma's 85mm f1.4 DG HSM, which is an unbelievable lens. And number 2 is Nikon's 58mm f0.95S Noct, a crazy expensive lens. And then there's the Yongnuo. Who knew? DxO, as you may know, and yes, that rhymes, it happens, test cameras and lenses, giving them scores in various areas. And while the results have been debated over the years, they have a pretty scientific operation over there. So if by their scoring the Yongnuo 85mm f1.8S DSM gets such high marks, maybe it's worth having a look at. Especially since that lens goes for just $345. And that's not a manual only lens. It's autofocus as well. And it's half the price of the competition. This Yongnuo amazingly scored better than the Zeiss APO Planar T-Star Otis 85mm f1.4, which goes for a whopping $4,490 US, and Sony's outstanding 85mm f1.4 G Master, which comes in at $1,800. The Yongnuo YN 85mm f1.8 was announced in March of 2021. It's constructed of 9 elements in 8 groups, has a 7-bladed aperture, weighs in at 380 grams, and is for Sony's E-mount bodies. There's also a Canon RF mount version as well, which basically seems to be the same lens, but that one hasn't been tested yet. So who knows if it'll perform quite as well. So if you're looking for what appears to be a great 85 on the cheap for your Sony E-mount body, maybe have a look at this Yongnuo lens. I can't believe I actually just said that. That's crazy talk right there. Next. In today's camera market, one thing I think we're likely to see more of is the rapid deprecation of cameras. Bodies that otherwise might have hung on for an additional year or so, in my opinion, are likely to get the axe sooner as camera makers feel the pressure to innovate faster and give people reason to look at something other than their smartphone. Something that really wows and isn't seen as being outdated technology is going to need to happen. And so it would appear that this might have happened with Nikon's Z7, which, if you think about it, is pretty darn amazing. Nikon's very first full-frame mirrorless body seems to be no more. We've somehow reached that moment, folks. Something that just a few years ago was unthinkable, as we wondered when the company would get off its backside and actually answer Sony. For the first few years of this show's existence, I wondered when or if Nikon and Canon would actually fight for that business. And now, not only have they made that move, we're at the point where the original body rides off into the sunset. That's pretty notable, I think. The Nikon Z7 hit the shelves over at Amazon and wherever else there are shelves these days on September 23rd, 2018, just under 4 years ago now. Amazing. A pretty decent lifespan for a body. And again, it's remarkable that here we are in late 2022, and it's been that long since Nikon finally stepped up and tried to give customers something mirrorless that was capable and not named Sony. As of this recording, it's quite difficult to find the Z7 in stock anywhere. That is, unless you buy one in a kit. Those kits, as you probably know, come in a larger box, which includes both the body and a particular lens that it's paired with, and sometimes it's two lenses. The vast majority of sales are for body-only configurations, as you might imagine, and it would appear that with most of those having been sold out there in the supply chain, all that's left is the configuration and kits, such as the one where the Z7 is paired with the 24 to 70mm f4S. The mothership reached out to Nikon for comment, and as per usual with them, they haven't commented. So that tells me that the Z7 is indeed deprecated. Otherwise, they would have said otherwise. And that's fine. It's been nearly 4 years now. We've got the Z7 Mark II, and the Z7 Mark III will be here before you know it, so everything is just fine. What's odd, though, is that the Z6, which came out the exact same time as the Z7, as you may recall, is not listed as old product, so give it time. That's coming as well. Next. It's been just over 5 years now, amazingly, since Boise-based Micron sold off memory card maker Lexar to China-based Longsys, with key people leaving to form my current favorite, ProGrade Digital, and since then, I haven't given Lexar a try. Hey, when given a choice, I'm supporting the home team. I'm sure they're okay, though. Anyhow, Lexar announced their new Gold Series CF Express Type A cards back in April of 2022, and we're just now learning more about them, including their price. And while they come in more expensive than those available from both Sony and ProGrade Digital, these new cards outperform both of theirs in the PetaPixel mothership's testing. Back in April, when these cards were announced, they said they'd be the world's fastest, that's their words, and they appear to be. Using both HD Tune as well as Blackmagic disk speed test with Lexar's new SD card reader, the mothership found that while not quite as fast as the company's published claims, which they never are, they're still pretty darn speedy and live up to the hype. One of the company's new 160GB Gold Series CF Express Type A cards was tested, and using HD Tune, it clocked in at a minimum transfer rate speed, also known as an average of both read and write speeds, of 521 megabytes a second at a minimum. It peaked at a crazy 671.3 megabytes per second and averaged 550.4 megabytes per second. In other words, a gig every 2 seconds, and that is crazy fast. They also tested this with my favorite, Blackmagic disk speed test, where it came in at 719 megabytes per second write speed on average and 729.7 megabytes per second average read speed. Who knows why the difference there? Now, by comparison, Sony's TUF CF Express Type A card averaged 651 megabytes per second write speeds and 731 megabytes per second read speeds, while ProGrade Digital CF Express Type A card came in at an average 679 megabytes per second write speeds and 784 megabytes per second read speeds. So the new Lexar card writes faster and reads a little bit slower. And if given the choice, that's how I'd personally want it. You know, I want the card to easily be able to handle the video that I'm shooting to it. And later when I'm accessing that video, I don't mind waiting a little. I'm impatient. All three of these cards are VPG 400 certified. That's the Compact Flash Association certification that lets users know that these cards will never drop below 400 megabytes per second sustained write speeds, unless they're faulty, of course. Bottom line, all three of these companies' cards meet that and easily exceed it. As for the price, here in late August of 2022, unless you're listening to this in the future, in which case, hello, future people, the new Lexar Gold Series CF Express Type A card in 80 gigabyte capacity is $200 US, and the 160 gigabyte that the mothership tested goes for $400. By contrast, Sony's 160 gigabyte card is $358, and the ProGrade Digital's is $364. Both of those were more expensive when they were announced, of course, so the Lexar is likely going to come down in price over time, as things do, usually. Next. If you own a Sony A7 Mark IV, well, you've got a great camera, as you know. It's outstanding. And thanks to a new firmware update, it's getting even better. But there's a little bit of a snag. Sony just announced firmware version 1.1 for the Sony A7 Mark IV, which adds to this already sweet body the ability to shoot lossless compressed RAW in medium and small sizes, in addition to other cool features like shutter speed and ISO settings retention, touch shutter functionality, improved IAF, and more. But you might have to wait a little bit, as shortly after it was available, the company posted a statement saying, quote, "It was confirmed that some products that updated may not operate properly in some cases. Distribution will be suspended until we can inform you of a modified version," end quote. That announcement being posted on Wednesday, August 24th of 2022, less than a day after the firmware was released. It's not yet known when the bugs will be worked out, but if you've got an A7 Mark IV, check that page linked in the show notes and give it a go when it's back up. Maybe wait a few days to see if it's messed up again or not. I don't know. In the meantime, let me tell you what is inside that update when it works. Users will now be able to shoot medium and small lossless compressed files in addition to large, a feature the company says has been highly requested for a good long time now. And if you're doing flash photography, you'll now be able to retain your shutter speed and ISO settings, thus saving you time having to change those back and forth, which is a pain in the butt, let me tell you. A touch shutter function has been added, and the company has also improved the accuracy of the already incredibly accurate and best-in-class eye autofocus. In addition to all that goodness, you can now record the camera's serial number and the metadata. The operability of the Wi-Fi connections between the camera and Sony's app has been improved. A 1-minute setting has been added to the power save by monitor menus, and you can now brighten the viewfinder's display according to the brightness of the ambient light around you, and the overall operational stability of the camera has been improved as well. When this firmware is updated and released, you'll need to execute it via an SD or CF Express card, and you'll need to make sure you're running version 1.05 first before you do so. Next. I think it was probably shortly before WPPI 2020 that Tenba sent me their sweet Axis camera bag. That's the one that's in all black with MOLLE strapping on the outside, so you can attach various things to it and make it further suit your needs. It is a great bag, and it's gotten even better with their new V2 versions. Before I forget, as always, if you use that code PetaPixel20, as so many do at tenba.com, you'll save 20% all day, every day, like you have for years now. That's TENBA.com. Tenba has been making bags for the military for over 40 years now, so they know precisely how to make a bag that's both rugged and functional. The Axis V2 collection includes 4 bags as well as a top loader, with the 3 largest bags, the 20L, the 24L, and the 32L. You've got 3 ways to access your gear, MOLLE strapping all over it, a hidden Bluetooth neoprene sleeve for air tags or tile trackers, and double sternum straps, among others. Being able to work out of them via side axis, top axis, or full rear axis is incredibly sweet, and you'll keep your shoulder straps from getting dirty and thus keep you clean as well. The MOLLE straps are great for attaching a number of Tenba Tools accessories or any of the thousands of MOLLE compatible items that are out there. And the dual sternum straps are great for all day comfort, whether you're a man or a woman. In other words, they're adjustable. The backs of these bags have ventilating, moisture wicking 3D mesh. There's a trolley strap for use with your rolling bag, a removable waist strap, and they're available in both black helix all-weather nylon and multicam black, which is pretty darn sweet. And I'm not a camo kind of guy. There is so much more to know about these incredible bags, so head on over to tenba.com, and whether or not you pick up the new Axis V2, use the PetaPixel20 code and save yourself 20% today or any day. Next. As you know, I've been a Kupo grip user since well before they sponsored this show, because their gear is rock solid and it is so well made. It's also not ridiculously expensive either. And if you saw that BTS companion video that I did for Benro recently, you saw a lot of my Kupo gear. Well, some of my Kupo gear. I own a lot of it. From the floor-to-ceiling Kupos with my Convi clamps and Max arms attached to them to my C-stands, boom arms, and so much more. My Kupo gear helped me to knock out that video without having to worry about whether or not they were up to the task. And before I forget, that's right, use that PetaPixel 20 code at kupogrip.com for 20% off all day, every day. That's KUPO grip.com. If you're tight on space, Kupos give you the ability to position your lights, a camera, and much more with the most minimal of floor space used. Convi clamps tighten down around the poles, giving you the ability to pop in a hex stud and mount a grip arm and a bunch of other stuff so you can boom a light out to where you need it. They have so many great uses, and I've got who knows how many of them now. The double Convi clamps are especially awesome. They allow me to safely span an aluminum pole across two Kupos so I can mount a camera above for top-down photography, and it also gives me a quick and easy way to mount a backdrop. If you haven't seen it yet, you must head on over to kupogrip.com and download their nearly 200-page catalog with full-color photos and a ton of great info about gear that can help solve problems for you and help you take things to the next level. It is great reading. You can spend all day reading that darn thing. If you see something you like, and you will, use that PetaPixel 20 code and save some serious cash. 20%! Next. If you've listened to this show for even a little while now, you know that third-party lens maker Tamron OEMs lenses for some of the biggest camera companies in the world. You might be shooting Tamron, you don't even know it. And in addition to that, they, of course, make some of the best lenses out there under their own brand. Like the company's new 50 to 400mm f4.5 to 6.3 DI Mark III VC VXD alphabet soup of a lens. A lens the company says will, quote, create an entirely new category for a high-performance, ultra-telephoto mirrorless zoom lens, end quote. This 8x zoom lens will be roughly the size of a 100 to 400 zoom, but with a wider angle of view. It comes in at 183.4 millimeters, also known as 7.22 inches long, while at the 50 millimeter end, 258 millimeters long, also known as 10.2 inches when zoomed to 400, and weighs in at 1,155 grams, which is 2.55 pounds. It has Tamron's excellent voice coil extreme torque drive VXD, as well as a linear motor focus mechanism that the company says offers, quote, excellent quietness and responsiveness, end quote, when using autofocus, of course. This ultra telephoto has a minimum focus distance of just 0.24 meters, also known as 9.45 inches at the 50 millimeter end for those doing a bit of macro photography, where you'll get a 1:2 magnification ratio. And this lens can zoom rather quickly as there's just a 75-degree rotation arc to get you from 50 to 400 millimeters. That's quite an achievement right there. Tamron says they've improved the shooting experience with an upgraded texture and operability. That's their words. There's the company's connector port for use of the Tamron lens utility so you can tinker with the configuration of your lens for different shooting situations. And you'll now have a new focus limiter function via that software. This 50 to 400 has an optional Arca Swiss compatible accessory tripod mount. The front of the lens takes 67mm threaded filters like most other Tamron DI Mark III lenses for mirrorless cameras. But you guys know to get your filters in 82 and a quality set of step-up rings, of course. And while your fastest aperture isn't f2.8 with this, with today's modern cameras and their ability to shoot at higher ISOs that are still pretty darn clean, you're pretty much good to go. You could definitely make use of this lens for shooting sports, wildlife, and other fast action. So long as you have enough light, of course. The new Tamron 50 to 400mm f4.5 to 6.3 DI Mark III VC VXD alphabet soup of a lens will be available this September 22nd of 2022 for $1,299. A decent chunk of change, but nowhere near as expensive as a 400 2.8. So there's that. Next. One thing YouTuber Peter McKinnon, with his nearly 8 million followers on that platform alone, doesn't need is me helping to promote this sweet new camera tool that he just announced. And yet, here I am, because it looks sick. Sick as in awesome. If you use a tripod a lot, you know that even if the plate has a D-ring to tighten it down, what you really want to do is bust out a coin or something and make sure it's secure. Otherwise, it's likely to work itself loose. But who has coins anymore? I usually keep a quarter tucked away in my wallet for just this reason, but I don't always have my wallet with me. For example, when I recently shot that video and the accompanying BTS video for Benro's Table Pod Flex recently, which is online, by the way, I was out in the Kupo Cave, also known as my garage studio, and my wallet was upstairs in my bedroom. And if you've seen the Kupo Cave video that I did a couple years back, you know I've got an entire wall of tools on that wall control panel system I have. But right there within reach, no matter where I go, handy in my pocket attached to my keys is a simple device I bought a couple of years ago called Thingama. It's awesome. It's also quite a bit cheaper than Peter McKinnon's device, which I'll get to in a second. The Thingama K532 camera mounting plate combo tool, which is a bit of a long name, I'll just call it Thingama, sells for just $19.95 on Amazon. It's made of S7 tool steel and, in my opinion, has all the basics. Everything you're probably going to need for the most part. There's a key ring hole in it, of course, to attach to your keys, a wedge that you use to tighten down the camera plate atop your tripod, and a 5/32, also known as 4mm hex key. Now, I prefer the wedge, personally. You could use a coin or carry around an Allen wrench, or instead, just carry around this thing. It's bulletproof. It just works. It's simple. It doesn't cost a whole lot. And even though it's small, you're not going to lose it, as long as it's attached to your keys and you don't lose your keys. Now, Small Rig makes a tool which is about $1 more than the Thingama and is also available on Amazon, but it's bulkier. It's kind of like a Leatherman multi-tool, but maybe half the size or so. A lot heavier as well. It has way more bits than the Thingama, but if all you need is a way to tighten and loosen your tripod's camera plate, it's perfectly fine. The Thingama, that is. Now, coming in at $95, ouch, is Peter McKinnon's PM camera tool. It features Phillips and flathead bits that you can place into a locking magnetic bit driver, along with a number of other bits that comes with it. It has a clip on it so you can make sure it stays put in your pocket, and its coolest feature, in my opinion, is a hidden slot for a full-size SD card. That way, you're never without one. So long as you have that tool with you and you've got an SD card in it. All that has to happen. Now, for my purposes, that Thingama is all I really need, or anyone needs. Heck, a coin is all you need, but we went over all that already. Anyhow, Peter McKinnon's PM camera tool isn't available just yet, but if you follow his Pete's Pirate Life site, you'll be among the first to know when the first production run is out. Am I likely to buy it? No. Probably not. But if Peter wants to send me one, I'll happily try it out and let you guys know all about it. Heck, tweet at him and let him know to hook your boy up. Next. If you happen to have seen that video that Benro had me do for their awesome Table Pod Flex, you saw shots created with the use of the original Capsule 360 and slider that turkey-based Myop sent me maybe, 3 or 4 years ago now. And if you watch the BTS video for that particular video I did, you're going to see it in action as well. It's pretty sweet. I've used it for a number of videos that I've done over the years, including the one that I did when I unveiled the Kupo Cave a little over 2 years ago now. If you're not familiar with what they are, a slider is basically a glorified rail used to move your camera to get some really cool shots, like you see on movies, TV, commercials, all that stuff. Mounted to the slider is a motion control device that you program via an app, and with a system like that, you can move your camera over and over again the exact same way, every time. And with multiple units, you can do more complex moves like moving your camera along the slider while also moving the camera along other axes. In my opinion, it beats a static tripod-based shot pretty much every darn time. With movement, you can tell a better story. It's a lot of fun. In the past 8 years, Myops has had 4 successful Kickstarter launches, and now they're back with another one for the company's new Capsule Pro, a product that can be combined with their previous Capsule 360, Slider, and Flex products. With the Capsule Pro, users are able to do things like motion time-lapse, multi-row panoramas, including multi-axes, as well as a number of 360-degree features. These are all controlled via the Myops app on Android and iOS devices, where you can set start and end points, along with a number of other parameters such as choosing the speed, whether or not you want it to reverse the sequence, and all that fun stuff. The Capsule Pro is able to hold beefier rigs than the original product. We're talking up to 26 pounds for pans and 8.8 pounds for tilts. That's 12 and 4 kilograms respectively, or respectfully if you say it incorrectly, which you probably should not. In addition to that, the Capsule Pro is quieter according to the company, as well as speedier, with the capability of doing a 360-degree rotation in a tad over 20 seconds. These units are compatible with Nikon, Canon, Sony, Fuji, Hasselblad, Olympus, Pentax, Panasonic, and Leica bodies, although you can absolutely 100% use them with any darn camera you like. And I know this because I've long since forgotten why I needed to use the cable that goes from the camera to the Capsule 360 unit that I have. I know that with their water drop photography kit, which I think is called the Splash, you have to use that cable connected to it because you have to precisely time the moment that the drop hits the pool of water and it trips the shutter on your camera. But it's not necessary with these motion control units and sliders. Clearly, because I haven't done that in forever and it's been just fine. I'm sure there's some benefit to doing so. I just don't remember what it is. The new Capsule Pro is slated for release sometime in December of 2022 for backers on Kickstarter, and they go for $299 US for one unit and $699 for a pan tilt 2-pack, along with a camera cable and L bracket. Now, as always, please remember that Kickstarter is not a store. While Myops has a great track record and has been around for a good long time now, there's always the chance that you could back a product and it never materializes. But in this case, I think it'll be fine. Next. Now, last episode was assignment number 53, and our assignment's sponsored by our friends at Fujifilm, and that was share your roll. And my favorite, tagged with my Fujifilm legacy so I could actually find them, was from Instagram user, I can't even pronounce the username, so I'm not even going to try. I don't think it's possible. It's a sweet shot of a roll of Velvia 100 sitting atop a rock at the shore with the setting sun and the ocean behind, and it just looks beautiful. It looks like a product shot, and I think it is just wonderful. Now, for our next assignment, number 54, and again, you can pop around, do them in order, redo them, whatever feels good. Just have fun. Anyhow, number 54 is share your lines. So maybe people in lines, parallel lines, leading lines, any lines really. Just have fun with it, and make sure to use hashtag MyFujifilmLegacy so we can find them. And again, thank you to Fujifilm for sponsoring our photo assignments and for sharing out their favorites as well. Now, before we go, consider treating yourself while helping to support this show by using those mostly 20% off promo codes at lensshark.com/deals. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to episode 371 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Don't forget to check us out at petapixel.com/podcast for the show notes and to see what else we have for you. If you head on over there, you can leave us a voicemail question that we can answer here on the show. Or if you don't feel comfortable leaving us a voicemail, feel free to email me at lensshark@gmail.com. And if you'd like to connect with me personally, and I hope you do, hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, where I'm LensShark. That's LENSSHARK. Don't forget the 2 S's in the middle there. I'm not Len Shark. I'm not responsible for what that guy says. All right, with that, I'll see you all in episode 372. Well, it's f8 and 2/50 of a second outside. It's time to shoot.
Please subscribe to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. My daddy is the host.